Welcome to Transcendence Talks podcast with your host, licensed professional counselor, Kristy Crabtree. Join us as we build the bridge between psychology and spirituality and discuss psychology for the soul.
Hey everybody, welcome to Transcendence Talks podcast. I'm here today with Nicole Taylor, and we actually met at the gym. It was a total random meeting. I felt like I had knew her from the healing community. I know a lot of people kind of in the psychotherapy world. She felt familiar to me, and so I started talking to her. And it turns out she doesn't heal people in the traditional sense, but she totally does in her own right. And I was so fascinated by the work that she does and how it relates to psychotherapy that I thought this would be a great topic for today's show. So welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Meeting you at the gym was just kind of out of left field. We were, doing your typical workout. You're kind of in your own zone. And so when you came up, I was like, oh, wait. She's like, are you in the healing? I was like, well, no, not in that sense. And then we started talking, and then I was like, yeah, this makes a lot more sense now. So yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this. So I'm Nicole Taylor. I own a company called Taylor to You. I'm a professional organizer. So I do interior organizing, anywhere from storage units to people's homes, garages, any home space that you can imagine I've done. So I've been doing this now for about 15 years off and on, and I absolutely love it. It's a huge passion of mine. And I think a big reason why I love it so much is that it transforms people's lives at the end of the day. That's the most reward out of the whole experience for me, is just kind of seeing them go from chaos, confusion, disruption to clarity, and seeing a way out of a lifestyle.
Absolutely. What you do really speaks to me. Just on a personal note, I really struggle with organization, and I always have. A lot like my clients, I have a diagnosis of ADD that I didn't even realize I had till I was an adult, and I don't do well with any medication. So I've always just had to find my own skills and tools to manage it. And what I've noticed for me is that the more cluttered my internal mental space is, the more cluttered my environment tends to get. And
absolutely.
Yeah, I've always felt like my environment, it's a direct reflection of how I'm feeling on the inside. And as I work with clients, I really notice that it's the same for them. I've worked with clients with major depressive disorder that are like, I'm so overwhelmed now because not only am I feeling depressed and I'm having a hard time, but now my house has gotten to a point where I feel like I can't dig myself out of this hole. Or I lost a loved one, and the thought of getting rid of their stuff or having to go through it is overwhelming. And now, I'm just letting things pile up. So grief seems like another heavy hitter. People like me with ADD who just procrastinate and start projects before they organize or clean. And people with anxiety disorders who get really, really anxious. And anxiety has this bell curve where it ramps up. Mm-hmm. You're productive. But once anxiety hits a high point, productivity drops off, and people go into a functional freeze or a non-functional freeze.
Yes.
And I'm kind of wondering, what presentations do you see? And, it's so cool because I feel like I work from this inside out transformation with people, but you do it outside in.
Yeah, we have a different perspective. You guys start from within, I start from without. So the way that it works is I typically have, I would say, 3 types of clients that I see pretty regularly as far as coming in and out of my world. And the first one I would say would be someone who is in a position where they have to change. Something traumatic has happened. They've lost a loved one, a death, a divorce. Divorce is a huge pointer here. There's also people who know they need to change. They have a desire to change. And then there's some that just can't find stuff in their closets, right? So like there's extreme levels of trauma to like you're at the point where you just can't keep up. You're a busy person. There's a lot of busy professionals I work with who don't have time, or actually they don't take the time really to maintain and manage their living spaces. And so across the board, it's hard to, put everyone in a box because we all have different things going on. And the one thing that I love about my clients, and the ones that I really have a passion to work with, are the ones that are dealing with a lot of grief. And that usually has to do with what's going on in their life, a loved one passing, a divorce. A lot of those clients are motivated to change because they're in a position to, like, they have to move forward, whether they have to get out of the house or, there are a lot of variations of changes are happening at once, and so they're more motivated to change, and a lot of it is associated with their trauma. I look back at, so when I go to meet a client for the first time, usually we'll have like a short intro phone call, and then I get some details over the phone. I could tell pretty much right away. They'll just come out and say it. I'm depressed. I don't know what to do with my life. That kind of thing. Or I just lost my husband, or I'm going through a divorce. So I get that, I kind of get that information up front, and then I can understand, all right, they're going through something major, or they're just tired of living in this lifestyle. So then when I meet them, it's really interesting how I could connect with them on a deeper level right away, because I can understand just from the little bit of information they gave me of how to interact with them moving forward. And I try to be as mindful as I can when it comes to trauma, because it's very sensitive. And even if you're not going through something major, but there's something huge that you need to change in your life, you can't continue to live a certain way. There's just certain ways that I've learned, I think, through my experience of just how to move cautiously but consistently with them. A lot of times when I'm working with someone who knows they need to change, but there's no outside motivation. There's like not a death or a divorce. That they just know that they have a problem. There's a problem here. Those clients are, I would say, the most hardest to work with, because they come with a lot of resistance, and they come with excuses and non-committal behaviors to the change that needs to take place. I've seen this actually most recently. A client about a month ago, she called me. It was a referral from a friend actually, and she's like, I want to be a minimalist, and I come into her house, and I don't go in with any preconceived notions of like where they are. I don't know these people, right? So I just try to kind of come in with an open mind and just really provide some insight to, okay, if you want to be a minimalist, okay, let's look at what that looks like, right? And so, and I try to be as respectful as I can, but there's sometimes it's like, well, in order to get to that goal, like if that's really your goal, to be a minimalist or to get to a certain level, let's go in the past and see kind of where you've been to what led you to where you are now. And when I can discover that for them, or with them actually, because I try to get them to talk to me.
They always know. They may not be able to identify it on a conscious level, but some part of them knows.
Yeah, and I think, it's been fun for me to kind of just listen. Sometimes the more that you're with them, the more they just open up to you and they trust you. It's a trust thing. It comes down to trust. Because if you're going into even just a working relationship with someone, and if you don't trust them, what's the probability of you sharing your heart with them?
Right.
So I like to establish that trust first with them. I think that's really important. And when that
is, they're so parallel, because they say in psychotherapy that the biggest indicator of any client's success is the therapist-client rapport. And it sounds like it's no different for you,
Yeah, it's exactly the same.
But the other thing that I thought was so cool that you said that I wanted to comment on and highlight a little bit is, you talked about the transformation is in the letting go, right? It's the release of the stuff and kind of that process of what am I willing to let go of. And when people have trauma, you know, what is trauma, right? Like trauma is a nervous system reaction, an outside event that feels like it's an overwhelming life event. It's too much for me to handle. So I'm either going to fight, I'm going to run, or I'm going to freeze, right? And so the thing that happened isn't the problem. It's the response that we had as a result of the bad thing that happened. And usually the response to trauma is to protect in some way, right? To hold on. Like when people are traumatized, they have a very protective posture. You can see it. I can see it from a client. Yeah, you see it in
You
them.
see it in their body language too,
Yeah.
and just how they hold themselves.
Yeah. But sometimes
So
protection is clinging
yeah,
on. And so like
yeah,
in your world, it's like sometimes that trauma response is like buying things, getting the dopamine hit to control a mood. Sometimes it's like hanging on to the things and an unwillingness to let go because it's protecting something a little more
yeah.
vulnerable underneath. And so I guess like I'm curious is like how do you work with people through, you know, who maybe are pre-contemplative. They're like I know I need change, but I'm not sure I want it. Like, how do you meet those clients where they're at, you know, and help them through?
Well, they're the most challenging ones because they know they need it, but again, they come with a lot of resistance. They come with a lot of pushback, and I try to I try to test them. And I mean, this sounds pretty bad. Let me rephrase that. I try to put them in a position to really see. So what I like to do is I like to reveal the truth. So for instance, I go into their closet. I'm going to give you a real example that just happened a month ago. I go into this lady's closet. First of all, she has a really huge closet. It's one of those walk-in closets, the ceiling, high ceilings. You know, she has shelves way from the bottom to the, I mean, tons of space, right? But
Yeah.
no room for stuff. So if you can imagine. So the first thing I noticed is we go in there and it's dark. I was like, where's the light? So we turn on the light and it's just this little light bulb that's like covered in a shade, and it's pretty much dark. It's like putting a little night light on in the corner. And I was like, is this all the light you have? And she's like, yeah. I was like, okay. I can't see, I mean, can't see anything. So to me, when I noticed that, I was like, okay, so she's definitely hiding stuff. I mean, she's out of sight, out of mind. If you can't see it, it doesn't exist, right? Until you're,
Let's pause there, right? Because it's like, I want to again keep making these parallels to psychology because
yeah,
stuff blows my mind, right? Like you're speaking in these delicious metaphors, and it's like, you're right. I mean, how often do we go through life and it's like, I know that this circumstance, this person is making me feel a certain way, but that's too much for me to cope with and I don't want to look, right? Like I'm going to keep the lights dim. Like, what am I not willing to see?
to
You know?
see.
So, oh, it's so powerful.
So this process, like the revelation of truth for them would be, I take every single, so for instance, this one client was a collector of leggings, okay? And I was like, well, it's hard to see how many she has. So the first thing I did, I was like, I need to find a light bulb. I need to get some light in here because I can hardly see what she has. So I find a light bulb, we plug it in, and finally I'm like, oh wow, okay. Like it's weird. Like it is literally something that is so connected to what's happening inside her that I could just see the parallels are so clear to me. And so I was like, all right, so I'm going to turn the light bulb on and hopefully spark something within her to start having her share with me. Because again, the minute I came in, there was a resistance level. And so I'm like, how do you, turn on the light without freaking them out, but at the same time, giving them insight to, in order to move forward, I have to speak truth. I have to be able to see what's going on here. So go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I can't imagine the level of vulnerability like that it takes just to invite you into the home.
Oh, for sure.
Sure,
For
there's so much. I mean, like in psychology, again, whenever there's something we're unwilling to look at, it's shrouded in shame. And as you're talking, I can feel the shame, the humiliation, kind of like energy welling up of like, oh God, like she's gonna turn the lights on. What is she gonna see? How is she gonna feel about me?
Yes. Yes, and that, I mean, you will really, I mean, I learn pretty quickly, and I can identify really fast when I start this process if they're ready or not. Because if they're ready, they're like, "Yo, yeah, let me get you a light." Like, you know, they're trying to give me the tools necessary to help them as
Yeah.
well, right? So that's just like kind of a physical thing that happened with this client. And the second thing is we pull out every single pair of her leggings, and then we start there. Because for people who struggle with ADD or ADHD, it's hard to be like, okay, we're gonna organize your whole house right now, okay?
Yeah.
But I like to start with one thing at a time. Just one thing. Like if you are focused on one thing at a time, don't think about what's in your pantry right now. Don't think about what's in that other closet. That's not going to help you focus on what's happening right in front of you.
Right.
So I'm just kind of relaying that into what you previously said about ADD. But yeah, so for her, I was like, okay, well, where's your biggest pain point? And she's like, well, a leggings. I know that I own a lot of leggings. I'm like, okay, that's a great place to start. So if you have one item or a few items or collectibles, a lot of people like to collect stuff, right? So, but you know that it's out of control or you need to kind of maintain it in some other fashion. So what I like to do is like, let's focus there. Literally why I call it a pain point, because it's a sensitive object or item in your life, something that you like or something that means something to you because it's associated with a memory, it's associated with a behavior, and those things are tied together, in my opinion, a lot with trauma. So if you can put those energies into some other things, right? So um, the gosh, it's crazy. Once you start seeing like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I had all these leggings, all these shoes, all these things. You literally take every single pair out. I count them. I color coordinate them because you have to identify like you might like heels, okay, but maybe you like pink heels, and then you own like 60 pink heels, but like you own two black pairs, one, you know what I mean? So like, okay, you like a certain thing for a certain reason,
Yeah.
but like if you really want to figure out like get down to the genesis of why you continue to do these certain things, like what caused you to get to this point, and let's go even deeper, let's go farther into the closet of your soul, right, and try to dig out those roots and pull out those reasons of like what started this, like what
Absolutely.
happened. And sometimes, like you said, subconsciously you don't remember those things. Heck, it could have been something when you're 6 years old, 7 years old, that traumatized you, and to this day you don't remember those things,
Yep.
right? Unless it's a major shift in your life. So I like to kind of dig at the roots. It's painful because, but if they really want to make change, that's where you have to start. Because so again, it's going back to the physicality of it, of like, all right, well, when did you start, when did you start buying leggings? Oh, I got into this and this and this. And then you start getting to realize, okay, well, then it's not just the stuff anymore. So it becomes a behavior, right? So I learned pretty quickly that this particular client, has, she has issues with she has a shopping disorder,
Right.
right? So like when she gets stressed, when she's anxious,
Yeah.
when something that she can't mentally handle or emotionally handle, she shops because it's a relief, right? It's something that it's just like it's just like someone wanting to lose weight, or anytime they are stressed or anxious, they want to go eat something, right? So it just
Yeah.
temporarily fixes their
Yeah, it controls the mood. And it's so interesting because it's almost like you going through somebody's closet, pulling everything out so that you could look at it and speak truth. It's very much what I do in a first session with the client too, right? The biopsychosocial. Like I'm gonna sit across from you and I'm gonna pull everything emotionally out of your closet so I can get a whole picture and I can look at it and I'm gonna ask very similar questions. Well, okay, like when you really started compulsively shopping, what was going on in your life at that time, right? That this behavior went from like normative to extreme. And they can usually identify that. And so it's almost like you're doing this biopsychosocial assessment through the closet.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even like when I do it, it's not like I go in and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to dig into their souls before I dig into their closets. It's usually during the process for me. It's like I get information up front right away, figuring out what client type they are. And then I assess, okay, I know this information. So then that's usually enough information for me to just start inquiring, asking questions. Like, while we're in the process of organizing a closet or pulling things out, or, it could even be as simple as just trying to find something. You're like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen that thing in my forever, right? So it does a lot, I think. I think it kind of gets to a degree of making of putting people in positions to make a choice.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're hard choices. Sometimes they need that extra encouragement from me, from a psychotherapist, whoever they need help from in those certain circumstances to get to the next level. It's not always as straightforward as you think, though. Like
I bet.
it can be like I go in, I feel good, the energy's good, everything feels fine, and then all of a sudden it's like something happens in their life that just throws us for a loop, and then we have to work, okay, well, didn't mean to pull that out of the closet today. You know what I mean? Then it brings stuff up. So
Well, I imagine there's going to be some bumps in the road. It's like, okay, I'm picturing a scenario where it's whether it's grief, whether it's trauma, right? But it's like first you're going in and you're assessing what are we working with, right? And that's already, it's almost like kind of like the taking off the clothes. Like I'm standing here naked in front of you, like this is really vulnerable. And then, okay, cool. Now let's look at this is how many leggings you have. This is how many shoes you have. And they're kind of like, oh gosh, like I didn't realize how bad this was. But then I imagine, the process of actually having to make choices and let go, it has got to be insanely difficult because what I've noticed with intuition, with kind of like an inner knowing that I think it sounds like you probably help people cultivate through this process, even whether they know it or not. But I mean, it's always like, does this resonate with me anymore? Like, does it represent who I am? When I wear it, do I feel authentic in my presentation?
Yeah.
If the answer is no, it's no. But I think so often the second thought is, oh, but it costs a lot of money. Oh, but my husband got it for me. Oh, but my kids got it for me. And now we're in a fight and we're not talking. Oh, this isn't me anymore, but I got it the same year that my grandma, moved here and we had these beautiful memories. And so it's like I imagine you're just overcoming so many kind of like cognitive, stories where so much meaning is projected outward onto an object that's holding that meaning that's still very much alive inside of their system and can survive without the object. But how do you tease that out for people?
I think it depends on the client. It depends on the situation. I like to compare it to energy. So anytime you hold on to something, it's usually connected to a memory.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of things that we have, I'm going to keep that because it's not technically useful, but it's connected to a memory. So I call that energy. So anything that you put energy into, your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions, right? It goes into this thing. And then that thing becomes almost a part of you. So it's hard to let go because you associate this thing as a part of who you are or what you are at that moment, right? So I like to think that if we stop using possessions that possess us, that's really technically what's happening, right? So our possessions.
To that, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, possessions. are deeply rooted in our trauma, and not all of them, but I would say the majority of the ones that are the hardest to let go. And
Yeah.
so, how do we get to the point where we don't allow possessions to possess us? Like, how do we get to that point of letting go and seeing a separation of our material world? Because
Wow.
really, if you think about it, these things are in the third dimension. These and those who are in this place of not letting go, so deeply rooted into this dimension that they can't see themselves as separate. So as an esoteric type way of thinking about it, I think that is strongly related to what's going on deep down inside. I mean, I lost my dad when I was 10, and it changed the course of my life. I became a minimalist during, like, over the course of time and over the moments or many times I moved in my lifetime, but I held on to some things for a long time that meant something to me, that was related to my dad, to something that reminded me of him, right? And that's not bad. I don't think it's bad to hold on to things. I don't think I don't like to put it in a box of, well, you have to let it go because he's gone now. No, that's untrue. But what I find the hardest thing to do is when you become like a hoarder status, right? Like when someone just holds on to things because they're afraid if they let it go, they'll never have it again. That's also associated with a trauma, right?
Right.
So my grandma, my great grandma, she was in the Depression age in the
Yeah.
1930s. So back then they lost everything, right? Or they didn't have a lot. So as time went by, and my grandmother, I mean, she's been passed now for 15, 20 years, but, growing up, seeing her hold on to all the things, I just started really, even at a younger age, I was like, what's the point? But again, it's these attachments of and then we could go to a different level of, I don't feel good enough, so I have to have stuff to feel like materialistically
Yes.
likable, right? It's like keeping up with the Joneses, the biggest house on the block. The more stuff you have, the better off you're going to be, which in fact is untrue. So there's some deep holes here. There's some levels of avoidance
Yeah.
deep down inside. And I always like to try to bridge the gap between understanding just psychologically what's going on, but also at a deeper level of, okay, this letting go process is actually a healing journey. And getting to that point of just being like, yes, this is hard. This is so hard, and understanding how hard it is, and taking on those energies myself sometimes, and feeling how it feels to let go of some major things. And then it's amazing once the process, if someone sticks with me, once the whole process is through, we start reorganizing, because it's not about organization. Organization, honestly, is the last step in all of this. It's the process of letting go, the minimization process, the downsizing, that whole bit
Yeah.
is the whole cake to me.
Wow.
Because
It's like the end result, the organization, the beautiful living space is
yeah,
cherry on the top.
it's the reward, it's the
Yeah.
trophy,
Yeah.
right? It's like you're doing the hard work to get the trophy. So once you get there, and then you look back and go, oh wow. And then I always like to ask my clients, I'm like, okay, at the end of it, where everything's done, we took before pictures, now we're taking after pictures because the projects are complete. I'm like, well, how do you feel? What does this make you feel? Like, how do you feel looking at this? And, half the time they're crying and hugging me and thanking me, and it's not me. It's just, I like to shine light on the darkness, to reveal the truth, to get to the place of freedom for these people.
What you just said, I'm going to repeat it. That was so powerful. I like to shine dark light on the darkness to reveal the truth and get them to freedom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy cow. Like, I feel like you just named what I do too. And I mean, but I think that's the process. It's like you just said the entire process of like what internal freedom, emotional and spiritual freedom is in a nutshell. And so often we want to bypass the darkness, bypass those lower energy centers. We want to like try to just make it look pretty and like stick it all in that junk drawer or like that closet in the spare bedroom and not look at it
Out
until
of sight, out of mind.
fill out, right? And then we have no choice but to look at it. And I feel like that happens in our emotional life too. It's like we can all sit back and reflect right now. Every listener can relate to this. What are you seeing in your junk drawer? What are you suppressing and not looking at in your emotional life, right? What are we trying to bypass and avoid?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a client this past week, and she's freaking awesome. She just lost her dad. He was older. He was in his 90s. He passed away a couple months ago. She just got out of a major relationship, so she's going through a lot of changes. And one of the first conversations I had with her over the phone, and I knew this was going to work, is because she said to me, I'm in a place of major change and I have to make changes inside and on the outside. And she's told me that she's starting to see a therapist, and then she wanted to hire an organizer. And I was like, this is a perfect match, because you're hiring someone to help you dig through the deepest parts of your soul, and I'm here to dig through your closets, because then it's going to reveal a lot too. You know, I've been working with her now for 2 weeks, and our conversations, we're a good match as it is. Like, she's just phenomenal. But you could just tell, like, her spirit is ready. She's, like, ready to just, like, just let go. Just let go. And she's like, I don't need it. I don't need that. I don't need this. And you could just tell right away if they have that motivation to change, they no longer want to be where they were. So you know that and that's a self-motivation. Kind of. I mean, I think there was these things, her dad passing and this breakup happened not too long ago, that probably motivated her to move forward, but the motivation's coming with inside her because she's ready for an overhaul.
Right.
And a mental, emotional, and physical overhaul. So it's pretty cool.
It is. And I mean, I've seen that, echoed in my own life, those sentiments. It's like, there's times in your life where you just feel stuck. And even that rut, like things feel really mundane. And that's not a time where you have that extra energy to dig deep and to clear. It's like, you're right, a catalyst, right? A death, a divorce, some kind of healing that happens emotionally for you. It's like that kind of gives you that energy to be ready to face the things that you've been avoiding in your third dimensional world, and start to shake things up.
It's really phenomenal. Last year, I have to share these stories because they're like so dear to my heart, but the couple of clients I had last fall, simultaneously, which they found me on Thumbtack. I don't know if you're familiar with Thumbtack, but it's like for services, if you're looking for a handyman or a plumber or whatever. Like, so I was just on there just to kind of get my business off the ground last year. And simultaneously, these two ladies, they don't know each other. One lives in Queen Creek, one lives in Scottsdale. They call me out of the blue. They're both going through a divorce, and they both are motivated to change. Like, huge change, too. One lady was moving out of a 3,000 square foot home into a travel trailer. Wow. I mean, not a travel trailer, like an RV.
Yeah. And
then this other lady, she has a 10-year-old daughter, and she just had me come in, and she would come up. It was funny because she works from home, and this is really a fun type of client because they're available when they're like in between calls or whatnot. And so I would be there all day organizing. I would have a pile for her to go through, or she would come in and I'm like, okay, I need you to make decisions. Keep, throw. She would just like go in there and knock it out. And again, it goes back to where they are in life, what they've gone through to get to this point of I've had enough.
Yeah, and it sounds like it really makes you examine your beliefs too, because some of these, just come from belief systems that were maybe ours, or we inherited them from, like you said, our parents, our great-grandparents who survived the Great Depression or were products of the Great Depression. It's like, do we have a belief system about what it means to be wasteful, about, what it means like maybe give things to somebody who could use it versus throw it away or whatever, right? But it's like examine these beliefs and then also weigh it against, well, what is the energy expenditure that I'm having to use to maintain my stuff? Like, because there's a cost emotionally to clutter and having to like look at it, have it increase your stress levels to maintain it to some level.
Absolutely. People, it's funny because I mean, clients have always said, well, you know, how can I justify hiring you if I'm not going to maintain this myself? I'm like, that's a great point. You got to get to the point where how can we make it functional for you? First of all, I need to learn a little bit about you to understand your functionality.
Yeah.
Like what's your day-to-day like? Like what do you do in the mornings? Like what's your routine? And a lot of those things you wouldn't think are related, but they are. Because it's habit, right? So a lot of us are very habitual, and what we do is what you see, honestly.
Yeah. Right.
So when you get into understanding the habitual patterns in people's lives, you get to really understand how to work with them too.
So we're deconstructing patterns, right, that are sometimes as old as our clients are, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, just for the listeners who are listening today who are like, oh gosh, like I have some self-examination, right, that I need to do. I'm feeling inspired listening to this to make some changes. And maybe they're looking around their house, like naming 5 to 7 places, right, that really need their attention. What tips would you give to our listeners so that they can be like, okay, where do I start first of all? How do I prioritize my spaces? How do I maybe make habitual changes throughout my day-to-day life that are sustainable, you know?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think what I would recommend doing is really examine your routines and the way you live, first of all, and then think about your daily routine. Like, why is it hard to get ready in the morning? What are those things what can't you find? First of all, it usually comes down to what you can't find in your closets, in your drawers, cosmetics, what have you. And how much time does it take to find those things in order for you to get out the door on time? So you have to, if you think about it, like how much time you have, how much time are you wasting through that process?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I would start. I would start examining, like, man, if only I could just do this, I could find this, I would have been on time or even early, right? So I would start there. I would also start with like,
so that
what's your biggest
rooms, cabinets, like closets,
yeah.
like that?
I would admit, I don't know. Well, you're talking to someone who likes to see everything in front of her. Like, for instance, I don't have a junk drawer. I have a bowl. Okay, I purposely have a bowl on my counter because it does accumulate over time. Obviously, if I don't maintain it, right? You just put mail or keys or extra pens or whatever. I do that on purpose because I want to see what's in it, and I want to be like, oh, okay, it's getting full. I got to start throwing stuff out. So like it almost is a reminder of, oh crap, I have to deal with that. It's getting out of control. So those type of things, and start small. I honestly think people think they have to change everything all at once.
Yeah.
Right? That's difficult. Don't do that. It's so hard. I would recommend finding something that's your biggest pain point, like getting ready in the morning, finding something in the pantry that you're looking for, the things that you use on a daily basis, keep out in front of you, right? So just kind of be symptomatic about it. You don't have to overthink it, because I feel like if we overthink things, and this can go down to like I have to have everything alphabetical order, and I have to, I don't believe that. I think that's way too overkill, at least for the standard person. I just think keep it simple, do one space at a time, start with your biggest pain point, your biggest time suck in the morning that drives you crazy every day. You're trying to find a certain belt. Well, where do you keep your belts? How many do you have, and which ones do you wear the most? So you just kind of have to think about your habits.
Yeah.
What you like. Again, I want to go back, just tap in a little bit to like compulsive behaviors when it comes to shopping. Like, those things, again, you have to dig deep into why you do that in the first place. But like every time you shop, this is what I do, almost every time. So if you like shoes, it's great. Shoes are, but you can only wear one at a time, right? One pair at a time. So you have to think about it logically. This is how my brain works. It's like, okay, I just got a new pair of sneakers the other day because I've been waiting to find a certain color because I'm weird about colors. But I want to go home because I have another pair of sneakers that I rarely use, but it's not the color I want. They don't feel right. So I want to come home. I bought a new pair of sneakers and I just throw out the other ones because I know I'm not going to wear them. They've been sitting in my closet. They're pretty practically brand new. I've only worn them like a handful of times. There's reasons why I won't wear them, but why would I keep them if I'm not going to wear them? Just to hold up space?
So that, right? Like I felt something in my body when you said that. Like when you said they're like practically new, I've only worn them a few times. Like that would be like where I, in my head, would start to justify. So, I mean, it's interesting to hear, like, just to even feel my own defenses around it start to bubble up. And then, it gets me thinking about the closet. I'm like, oh yeah, like I do have shoes, right? That I've justified. Like I'm in my 40s. I can't wear heels anymore. My body screams. But I'm like, oh, but what about those occasions twice a year where I want to look cute and wear heels, and I have several pairs, right? And so, but I'm thinking the same thing. All my defenses are coming up. I'm like, oh, but they're new, and like I might need them, like if we do a nice anniversary dinner.
Yeah.
But anyways,
No,
that's tough.
No, it is. It is. But I mean, I've been trying to kind of give this analogy to my clients. It's like, it's okay to shop. It's not evil to go shopping. It's how you keep your things and how much you have at the end of the day.
How you live, right? Like I like to hear how your brain processes like your daily habits, because I mean, I want to go back to this term minimalist, right? Like I'm wondering if you can kind of like define that, and I'm wondering like how did you get to this space of recognizing, like has this always been intrinsic for you, or was there something in you?
I would say, so kind of where I became a minimalist was over time. I would say it definitely started taking root when I was younger. My mom and my grandma and my great grandma, so it's on my mom's side, they have this overwhelming need to keep all the things. So, and I recognized this at a young age, and I can't say I was like, oh, I never want stuff when I was a kid, because I did, but I remember when I was like 8 or 9 and it would be lights outside, my parents would be like, go to bed, okay, and then I would just stay up in my room and turn on my little light by my bed and go through my stuff and just like organize it, and like, and I would know pretty much everything I had because I would do that like on a regular basis. So I take that into my adulthood, and I'm like, if I can tell you right now exactly how many pairs of shoes I have, and how many this I have, and how many that I have, and what colors they are, and be excited about it, that means that they are meaningful to me. But I'm just going into this idea of, if you can do that by the less stuff you have, it's going to mean more.
Okay,
So,
cool.
go ahead.
No, it's like there's this there's like a reverence, right, that you bring the work of like, and it does feel like a way of honoring those things and giving them a higher sense of importance that I really like. I really resonate with that too, because it's true. Like you get so many things and you forget you have it, and it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of a shame, right? Like that's kind of a bummer.
Well, it's almost like diet, right? Like if someone's like, oh, you need to stop eating ice cream. So for instance, you like ice cream, that's your thing. Like you love ice cream. Well, first of all, it's going to start losing its luster if you have it for every meal or with every meal, right? So in the same sense, if you keep on getting more and more of the same stuff, that thing is not going to mean as much to you. Right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I see it. So as I got older, and I moved a lot, by the way, too, like after my 20s, I moved quite a bit. So obviously the more you move, the less stuff you don't want to move with you, right? So that helped, obviously. That was actually a huge part of it. But I would say the majority of it, as I've been able to maintain the same amount of stuff since for the last 10, 15 years of my life, is because I care about what I have. And I can name off 5 things I probably, unless I absolutely have to part with, will always have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my bike. That's my computer. Let's see, my bike, espresso machine. That's really important to me. So like name off these things. I probably have a few more on there. But the point is like, those things are important to me.
Yeah.
I don't need to have 5 bikes. I can only ride one at a time. I don't need to have, like, if my espresso machine breaks, that's my only concern. I would just replace it, right? So I don't know. I just try to keep it as simple as possible too. Like, what another book or organizer that you might recognize is what sparks joy. What brings you joy?
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Right?
Yeah, there were a lot of memes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of memes. So there's this Asian woman, and it was this, 10 years ago when this lady came out. I think she actually had a show. I can't
Yeah.
remember.
I remember seeing the show.
Yeah, so like her whole concept is like, does it serve you anymore?
Yeah.
Does it spark joy? Does it bring you out of a bad place mentally, right? So those things aren't bad, but how much of those things do you need, and what are they, right?
Mm-hmm.
And are they, another thing it comes down to, and this is just my logical brain, is functionality. Is it functional? Does it serve you in some way?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To me, I just think I have I would say a larger separation of material gain, because it's important to me until it's not. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, our values intrinsically shift over time. Our needs shift over time.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I mean, I think those things, just to give people some insight of how to get to that place.
Yeah. So tell me about, like, when they achieve that, like you're in there, you're taking the after photos, people are crying, they're so excited. Like, how often are people able to, like, maintain, you know what I mean, those spaces, or are they able to extrapolate that into other spaces, or do they call you and they're like, okay,
Okay, Nicole, I need to find this. No, so I'm glad that you asked that. I feel like a lot of the clients who are motivated will keep up with it. And occasionally, I even have the clients who are, the motivators, the ones who want the change, who are doing everything that they can to maintain it, do still have busy lives.
Yeah.
So things come up, something, or they get stuck in a rut again, which is possible. We all have moments in our lives that aren't going to be great, right? So I do have those clients who will call me for a quick fix. I call it a quick fix. It's usually a 4 to 8 hour session. I go in, do a quick fix of maintenance. If I notice some things like, I noticed that you have like 10 of this, like 10 of one item, right? So tell me about that. What's been going on? So like you start to, sometimes old habits die hard, right? So they creep up. They start to they trickle back in to our existence. And it's good to kind of be on top of it. And I'm not on a retainer. That would be nice, but at the same time, hope to leave these clients with so much motivation to keep at it, which the energy is so wild. Like at the end of a session or at the end of an entire project with a client, the energies are so high and so vibrant that it's like they don't want to go back because they like how this feels. Right?
Oh, I bet. I mean,
It's strong.
Transformation is not just external, it's internal. And so the room I'm sitting in right now is my home office. And this room used to be my clutter pile. This used to be like, it lived behind a closed door. I didn't have a home office. And so I'm going to speak about myself and just full transparency. And maybe you could give me some practical tips, because sometimes I struggle with myself. But, I full blown have ADD. And so for me, this was a place where it's like, when I'm going to speak to my ADD, I guess. So with my ADD, the way that I find I work is I prioritize the things that make me happy. I love to work. I love what I do. I love spending time with my kids. I love being with my animals. So when I have time, that's what I do. And so like sometimes I'll notice, this needs to be picked up, or this needs to be gone through. And I will procrastinate, because procrastination is a huge part of executive dysfunction. So then I'm like, that's not a priority. I would rather work and create something or call somebody about this podcast I'm going to do or envision something for the future. And so I know in my heart, bad decision, but it's like in that moment, I'm like, there's always tomorrow. Well, tomorrow doesn't come. And then what I notice is like this room, I redid it and it makes me so it's sanctuary in my home.
I love
Myself, I'm actually gonna like turn the camera, show you like the bookshelf.
Oh, I love it. That's cool.
Like clean in here. There's just one little plant in the corner, but
Perfect.
I probably just made everybody dizzy. I apologize. So
Perfect.
it's like sanctuary. So I'm like, I will not allow it to get cluttered again. But then I'll just clutter other areas. And then like somewhere else becomes the place where, because it's like, it can be so overwhelming. Like, mail comes in and it's not just mail. It's like, well, this requires a phone call and this has to stay here until we actually take the car in to get the recall notice taken care of. And
Sure.
doctor thing, and until that's resolved, so it's going to take time. Oftentimes it's the last thing I want to do, so I always prioritize things ahead of it.
Sure.
And then it makes me I feel like it actually makes my ADD worse because it's taking up this mental real estate of knowing that I have to do it. And then what I tend to do, because this is how ADD works, I've literally been like this since I was a kid, but I'd love to change it, and I'd love to hear your opinion. So I'll let it get to a point where I feel completely overwhelmed and I feel broken by it. And then in my brokenness, I get like hyper focused and I do it all at once and it's awful until it starts to pile up again. It's such a.
Let me ask you, approximately, does this happen every 3 months, every 6 months, or more consistently than that?
No, I mean, I don't want to tackle it. Like, I put it off. So
how long do you put it off until, when's the breaking point?
good question.
Time frame?
Yeah, like, it depends on which space. My kitchen, it's like the heart of the home. It's more visible. I'll tackle that more often.
Yeah.
Nooks and crannies, the closets, the under the bed, the spare room. That's like maybe twice a year if I'm on a good year. Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, closets are easy to close the door on, right? So you don't have to see them every day until you have to find something. And again, it comes down to your habits. It comes down to, like you said, priorities. Like what you put on the back burner will stay on the back burner until you get to those places, right?
Totally.
And that's just human nature.
Yeah.
There is a way out, but you have to be more cognizant, more mindful of your behavior.
Yeah.
What I would do is do a mindful assessment of your daily routine on a weekly basis. And so what that looks like is just kind of be mindful of what you do in the mornings. Just think it through. Like right before bed is a good time to do this. Like I know meditation and like kind of getting into like sleep mode, but like just assess your day.
Yeah.
At nighttime, and that way you could be like, okay, why didn't I put so you start thinking about just even the minutia, things that don't really matter, but things that at the end of the day or at the end of the week or whatever, you're like, oh man, I'm back here again. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of I would start with like a mindful practice of just being cognizant of how you live every day, and taking a few minutes at the end of your day to kind of assess, like, oh man, why didn't I put those clothes away on the bed? Or why didn't I, you know what I mean? Like, not to beat yourself up. That's not what it's about. Yeah. It's about just being mindful.
How do you
really
guys though? Like, I mean, right? Okay, so let's just say, there's a pile of clothes on top of the dryer. There always is. There's, the fridge probably needs to be cleaned out.
You could. There's several ways you could prioritize this stuff. I would say, unless you guys are like really, I mean, I wouldn't say this for you because I don't know you. I don't see your house. I mean, I want to get to know you, but I don't see your house.
I don't want to give the wrong idea. I mean, it's like, but I'm totally not like one of those moms where you walk into my house and you're like, oh, nobody lives here. You're like, no, this is like lived in.
No, and that's okay too. It's okay.
Of unattended to things, but we're not hoarder status and it's clean. It's just, you could see the procrastination. You could see evidence in different places. And I guess, what I'm wondering is like, how can I change my daily habits to slowly chunk away at it? Like, establish a routine where maybe I'm procrastinating less and making excuses.
Yeah, I would pick one day out of the month to do tasks that, or every 6 months, and put it in your calendar. Like I said, I'm a huge calendar buff. Calendar, write it down. Have something you can see every day, like whether it's like one of those calendar things that you can write with an eraser marker and just kind of be able to jot it down so you can see it on a monthly basis. Like, okay, the first, or say the last Sunday of every month, I'm gonna take an hour to clean out the fridge. Just like, even if it's just like one or two things a month that you want to make a change in that way. And it's gonna take time because you have to create that habit and you have to be consistent. And without being consistent, it will never become habit. So I would say definitely start out with one or two things. Don't overwhelm yourself. Because what will happen is you'll just, again, get burnt out. And then those won't become priority anymore, right? So again, they're going to fall into those loopholes that you're used to.
Yeah, no, you're right. I really like the idea of scheduling things on the calendar, because for me, it's like I need accountability. Like if I put my gym clothes on in the morning, I'm going to get to the gym. I'm not going to go throughout my day and have to take gym clothes knowing I didn't make it there. That's just not part of my reality, right? Like it's such a priority. But you're right. It's like, I guess reassessing values. Like that hasn't been a priority. It always feels like I have something more important to accomplish. But then when I get home at the end of the day and I want to relax, I look around and I'm like, it's really hard to relax. So maybe this needs to be more of a priority. So maybe for me, it's like reassessing values and finding ways to be accountable to myself.
Yeah, and I'm a schedule-oriented person, so for me to put it on my calendar and into my reminder notes, like my phone will say, hey, reminder, this day at this time you're going to be doing this. I'm pretty OCD about keeping on top of what's on my calendar. So like if something I know is coming up that I have to take care of, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. And the same thing with the gym. It's like I go Monday, Wednesday, Friday. For the life of me, I can't get there on Fridays because it's not a priority, right? So like I have to be like, okay, Fridays is important to go to the gym. So I have to just like, oh, we're going today, So again, it's like I would say start small, like in your fridge once a month, just small, a little bit at a time, and then you're like, oh, okay, I think we got this. And then, I don't know if you guys have kiddos. Have them help, like you just kind of create some kind of system, if you will, in the house that works for everybody involved, because it's not, you don't live by yourself. So it's, so like sometimes share the load, or like, or if you clean out the fridge, have someone else take the trash out, right? So like those kind of things, just to kind of help you stay on it. Always partnering up with someone is awesome.
Absolutely. Well, that creates like support, accountability. That does huge. I mean, I can feel the shift in my energy as we talk about that. I'm like, oh yeah, that would really lighten the load. And it's funny because it really makes you deeply examine yourself, right? Because it's like, then you have to ask yourself, do I ask for help often enough? Do I take everything on myself? Is that part of why this feels so overwhelming, right? It's like you have to ask yourselves these deeper questions, like, why do I feel this way?
Yeah, and I feel like taking on all the things by yourself is just, especially if you have a husband and kids, or at least people in your life that are capable of helping, I'm not opposed to that at all. Totally. Especially if they live there too and they're equally involved in how things get, the way that they get. So I just feel like that also just kind of takes a lot of pressure off your shoulders. Like, oh, it's all my responsibility, I have to do it all. It's totally. So
I think we have so many objections, right? I'm sure there's so many things that people tell themselves, whether it's like responsibility or, feeling shame around the way that, their external environment looks, that keeps them kind of frozen, like whatever it is, right? But it's like really having to take a deep dive and face those belief systems, deconstruct those belief systems, and find
Yeah, I wanna say one thing that you just mentioned about shame. When it comes to certain clients, they do have a lot of shame. They have a lot of guilt and shame and all these very heavy feelings, right? Emotions that a lot of times will prevent them from even calling me for help, right? Or
Yeah.
calling for someone to come from the outside to look in, because I mean a lot of these behaviors and things that they're dealing with on a regular basis is linked to shame and guilt. And so if I had to say anything to anyone who is hesitant to hire an organizer or call me, like, please, would love to, but if they're like, she's not going to want to see what's in my closet, or she's not going to want to understand like what's going on in my life, I'm like, the thing is shame and guilt is linked to fear, and fear can only disrupt freedom. Like that's fear is the opposite of freedom in my mind. And if we're so afraid for the knowingness that we have within ourselves for change, then you'll never get to the next level. So I just want to let people know, like, I don't ever want to go into someone's house and be like, oh my God, you have 1,000 leggings, or you have shoes that, I'm not like that. Again, I'm not attached to that stuff, or it's not my world. And it's not my job to make people feel horrible about it, because they already do. I don't, they already do. They already feel shame or guilt or like these underlining pressures of like, that's stemming from their trauma.
Yeah.
And I'm not there to shove it in their face. I'm there to relieve it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it really comes down to choice.
Yeah.
And understanding that they're not being judged. The only, we are our biggest critics, and we're the ones who judge us the most. And you'll learn freedom when you stop judging yourself.
That's beautiful. Absolutely. I completely agree. Finding compassion, right? Like finding compassion for the parts of you that felt it necessary, right? Like to buy these things, the parts of you that were frozen in fear because of your trauma, the parts of you that were overwhelmed. I think it's the opposite of shame, right? Like, I mean, I look at shame when I'm working with it, like clients, it's almost like a mold. And mold can only grow in the dark, cool, hiding spots. But it's like the minute we bring these things to the light and we look at them and we begin to understand why they were there in the first place, like we can start to remove the shame and really cultivate some self-compassion and understanding, and this deserves that too, because it's the same spiritual work, that you're doing, that I'm doing in my office. And when I look at it from, this lens of internal family systems therapy, every part of you, every behavior has a positive intention. And so even though it might feel shameful that like, we allowed this to get messy or we bought too many things, we have to really look at what's driving that behavior, because there's an unmet need. And how do we really honor the positive intention, right? Like, I ate that food because I wanted to shift my mood. I bought that pair of leggings because something felt so empty inside of me. I was looking to cultivate it outside of me.
Yep.
And once we become aware of these things, we can make change, and we can really start to heal. And gosh, what a gift, Nicole.
Thank you for, I have a passion to help people. And I've been given a gift, a skill set to help cultivate that. And I love it. I absolutely have a passion for people. I have a passion for freedom. And when it comes down to our things and how we live our lives in our homes, your home is your safe haven. Your home is a place where you go to find rest and peace. And if you don't have that in your home, and all these things are surrounding and like cultivating this negative energy and these feelings and memories that you have that are holding you back, I want to let you know there's a way out. There's a way out for people, and I want to provide that.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Yeah, freedom, that word is like so near and dear to my heart because that's what I feel my work is too. It's like liberating people from fear, finding that internal sense of freedom,
Yeah.
autonomy, sovereignty in their mind and their bodies. And I can feel that energy as you talk about it, right? Because we can
Yeah.
cultivate that in our homes and in our worlds. If somebody, I'm going to link it in the show notes too, but if somebody wanted to work with you, how would they find you?
Yeah, you could go to my website. It's www.tailoredtoyoullc.com. Taylor is here. I don't know if you can read that, but
I
that's
see it.
literally tailored to you.
Okay.
And you can find me on Facebook. Tailored to You is on there. I'm on Instagram. You can call me I do free consultations, usually an hour, just to kind of get to know you, get to know, the ins and outs of your life, and then kind of start working on those pain points, and then getting through that stuff, and then
Perfect. And you're in the Arizona area only.
yeah. So well, yeah, I'm in Arizona. I live in Gilbert, but I travel. I have clients all over the place. I have clients in Scottsdale, Phoenix, Tempe, Mesa, all over. I'm all on the east side. So yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Nicole, thank you so much for being
Yeah.
here today.
Thank you, Miss. I love this. I appreciate it, and I love what you're doing in the world. And you're making large strides in people's hearts, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you. All right, listeners, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.